Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our podcast dedicated to sight reading through the lens of the historically informed performance practice. My name is Darina Blogina, and I have a very special guest today. I really wanted to interview you for ages because you're an incredibly interesting person and artist. Could you please introduce yourself for our listeners?
So I'm Laura Granero, and I'm a forte pianist, though I'm also a pianist and a harpsichordist. And I'm currently based in Basel, well, actually in Binningen, and I studied together with you at the Schola. Yeah, and I also do a bit of research.
We have met at the Early Music Summit, and there I also did a little interview. It was extremely interesting to hear about your ensemble that you organized.
Yes, so I'm also directing the Fanny Davies Ensemble. I know that even in early music, it's not very typical to have women who are directing ensembles. We try to use different models than what is more standardized with the Baroque ensembles with one artistic director. In our case, it's really collaborative ensemble. Actually, it's more like what we call like a lab, in the way a place in which researchers and performers meet. Because in 19th century, there's a lot of the risk that we just perform with historical instruments, but like there are some that don't make the question, just take the historical instrument, but don't really do the research or are not in contact with the researchers. And because it's, like Beethoven or Schumann or whatever, they played more like you tend to play it in the normal classical music. So for me, it was this collaborative approach. And we gave the name of Fanny Davies because she was a student of Clara Schumann and also worked very closely with Brahms. She was a very important pianist at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century. And of course, it was also a really exciting moment in history for women because of the suffragist movement. And it's very funny because there are so many parallels between nowadays and back then. She was in a way a romantic pianist. Yeah, she still had a lot of problems as a woman in the field. Like in that moment, they couldn't teach in the high institutions. They could only be assistants or so. And she was interested in early music. She owned an original Schumann harpsichord. And she also cared a lot about diversity and about helping also women composers and about programming music outside just the typical Central Europe or German music. So yeah, she would play Russian composers, Czech composers, Spanish composers, Italian composers. In a way, it's exactly what we try with the group. So.
How do you build up your concert program and your concert strategy with this ensemble?
Yeah, so funnily, we have been much more asked. It also because it's a very international ensemble, like we collaborate with people a bit from everywhere. We were actually playing much more in France, in Spain, in the Netherlands. On the one hand, we started doing more concerts in Switzerland. And on the other hand, we also have created now a space for the ensemble, which is an atelier with historical instruments in Binningen. Because I think for an ensemble it's also important to have like a place to be so that we can be ensemble in residence and we can rehearse, also play concerts and present our projects. And hopefully with the time, if we manage to have a regular public, then we will also manage to invite other musicians and have a bigger programming and do a lot of things also related to these issues also of gender. And I'm also now very interested also in issues of mental health, especially in early music, but in general in classical music, because I see many colleagues struggling. Myself also with many problems and situations in which it's difficult to just stay completely healthy and positive about everything.
Could you tell about this post that you have recently made, if you would like to touch this question? Because I think it was a very resonant post. What motivated you to share your emotions with the others? And what did you expect as a reply to this post?
Yes, so I realized that in a way, when we study at the Schola, we are kind of in the perfect environment in the sense that it's like an ideal world, but not just the Schola in general. I think schools in general, and this is not meant as a criticism at all. I think it's also nice to encourage this kind of nice atmosphere in which you can focus on the music and so on. But the truth is that you can graduate with best marks or Auszeichnung or whatever, and then you go into the market, and then you also realize that maybe there are some skills that you miss, or that you don't completely understand how the market works. And I was quite lucky in a way that some people really cared about my projects and about helping me. And last year I had so many concerts, and in a way I could say that the career was being quite successful. But then in the last months, and I think this is something that happens to a lot of people, there are these phases in which you start also trying to get some applications through, either job applications or with your ensemble or whatever. And then there are sometimes these phases in which you get like a no every week. I even got a no today. It's okay. In a way, I thought like, well, what can I do with this? I can just be sad and be depressed about all of these no's. And I even didn't take this one, the specific one that I posted on Facebook personally. In a way, it was something that I was expecting, because I also understand that there are organizers' perspective, because I also organize concerts, for example, with La Nouvelle Athènes. And there are so many reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with quality, but also with other problems, economical problems, political problems, the decisions of other colleagues, and so on. But in a way, it was important to me to just not keep it kind of negative feelings for myself, but to say, okay, let's put it out. Why it had so much resonance is because musicians are confronted with this kind of situation. Sometimes it's not even a no, maybe it's just that the concert promoters never reply to the emails, which feels even worse because they feel like they're ghosted.
It happens so often when
Yes.
people just don't reply.
Yes.
Even a no in this case, it is a reply and it is somewhat a feedback.
I was talking about a colleague. We were organizing some stuff with some project, and I realized that this person had replied to a proposal in a very quick, not especially nice, or saying like, hey, thank you so much, or we would be on, or we will see if this works, or something like this. And then I had a conversation with her, and she said, well, but like most of concert promoters don't even answer these emails. And I was like, yes, but we have to be a model. I think we have to care a lot, because musicians struggle with these situations. There was even someone who said, I got 100% of no's in job applications.
I think in general it's a positive dynamic that people started talking about that, is because in a certain way it's a taboo. In our scene we are expected to be successful. To me it seems to be like this romantic idea of a genius on the stage, preferably a man. Sorry, not sorry. Yes, this idea of a composer or a genius or a virtuoso player. With this image, you should be always successful. There is an expectation created, and you should fulfill this expectation. That's why I think people are not used to talk about this no answers and replies to their projects. And that's why I think I was positively shocked and happy at the same time that I have read your post. This brings something to think about in our community. I think it's really needed.
Also, one of the issues is like, what are the consequences of speaking out loud? Some things that are clearly, in some occasions, one can say even wrong. There might be reasons, but even in some moments, I think, it really can go that it's something that you could really complain about. It's always the question, is it worth this fight? Are they going to put me in a black list? First of all, that this is more of a structural problem than an individual problem. Even if we perceive it as individuals, we are not alone. We are all confronted with these problems. And it's a problem, I think, of the system, of the values, of classical music in general, of the institutions. Mindset. And also, yes, exactly, this idea of that there's no space for a bad day. We should also embrace, like, for example, if we think about these musicians of the past, Joseph Joachim, he was the favorite violinist of Johannes Brahms, together with one of his students, Marie Soldat, a woman. Of course, we know of Joachim, but not so much about Marie Soldat. But Joachim was known that when he had the best day, he was the best violinist in the world. But he had many, many bad days. Liszt also had some bad concerts in which the Schumanns were like, okay, even an amazing genius can have a bad day. And Clara Schumann also struggled, for example, with stage fright. Even someone nowadays like Marta Argerich also struggles with this. I like very much that in the 19th century, they said a lot that wrong notes were a matter of genius. I'm not 100% sure if it was Rubinstein or Leschetizky. I have to look at this. But I think that the idea is that if you are... I think it resonates also a bit with what Harnoncourt said sometimes, that I think it was something like there has to be risk. It's like taking a flower in a kind of a dangerous place in which you can just step and fall or something like this. That if you want to, if you are in a state in which the emotions and what you are transmitting, it's so perfect. There has to be moments of vulnerability. So also in your performance, you cannot be with this impression of complete control. There has to be things that are imperfect in a way. And this is what will make also the beauty. If you are just trying to control yourself, then you don't let space for the hidden beauties, I think.
What are we playing today?
Yeah, so 2 songs by Fanny Hensel-Mendelssohn. I always say one thing, and I think it's that when we speak about these gender inequalities today, it's amazing that we are trying to encourage more women, on the one hand, women conductors and women composers, because the percentages are so horribly low, and probably they are some of the most affected in the industry. But on the other hand, I think this really applies to not just that. It really applies to everyone and also to performers. And I think I always use Fanny Mendelssohn as an example of that, because she composed. She was not encouraged to publish, but at least she composed quite a lot. But do you know how many concerts she performed in her life, though some consider her better than Felix as a pianist?
1.
3 public performances. I mean, she was confined to her salon. And this is a thing that it really, also with my dissertation, I'm tracking that it comes really to today. There are some studies about, for example, pianists in competitions. What is the percentage of prize winners? And it's super low. It's something like 15-18% of international competitions. And there was also now an article in The Guardian talking about these things. And yeah, I mean, for me, it doesn't surprise me, because I mean, the generation of my teachers, they were struggling with like one of my first teachers. She was an enfant prodige, and she left the career when she married. And then the other one got pregnant and also had to teach and do less concerts. And it's really a problem. And the ones who didn't stop, it was because they were really fighters. And I think these inequalities come to nowadays.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the texts of the songs? One was about the flowers.
This first one, that it's about why are the roses so pale and why are the violets so silent. Of course, it's about romantic love, but you could also have it a perspective of today and think that the women are the flowers who maybe they're pale and and they're not being heard by their lovers or by the industry.
And the second one was about
it was a kind of a wandering. It's a wandering song, exactly, with this kind of movement. This song that already starts before it.
The song was written in a way that it has this recitativo in the middle, kind of, let's say, which reminded me of a Renaissance style of writing with a proportion. It's incredible how well it is composed.
It is amazing. This really dramatic moment with recitative and also this tremolandi style that also feel very modern, even for the Mendelssohns that were more conservative in a way.
And what do you think about such arrangements now on the spot for traverso and fortepiano? Anyways, it's written for the fortepiano. Was it in practice at that time that they would just do such an arrangement, or?
It was really, really common, and we also have even written transcriptions that are a kind of an evidence of this practice. And of course, this is just like the top of the iceberg of a lot of things that they were doing. And it's also super fascinating to analyze these transcriptions. Also, for strings, they have fingerings. They don't leave the material of the song completely as it is, but they add stuff, ornamentations, but also sometimes even sections. And preludes and postludes, and it's really, really, really nice.
Yes, I remember there is also a historical arrangement of Mendelssohn's Trio D minor, where he himself wrote this flute part for the market in London, let's say, because I think at that time in England they had a lot of virtuoso flute players that were playing everything super fast. And it was interesting to see this Mendelssohn's suggestion, his flute version. He sometimes simplified. He changed triplets to 8 notes.
Well, I think in Renaissance and Baroque, it's a bit better than medieval. Well, you have to tell me. When we propose arrangements sometimes to concert organizers, are they historical? And it's like, no, I made them myself, like a 19th century or an 18th century musician would do, because it was just part of their life. So it should also be part of our life in a way.
Yeah, I agree to that, because sometimes I get this question, but why? Why do you arrange these pieces?
I mean, first of all, they did it in the time, and second of all, it's also kind of a creative exercise because you go beyond the notation. You just have to also think what works for your instrument, and then you also don't take the score like an urtext or a relique, but as a kind of what they cared about, something I think that goes beyond just what is on the score.
How to build up a program in a certain way that you care about the context and the content, and maybe about the context of that time and the context of our time, and including the values that are relevant for us now.
Yeah, that's a difficult question, of course. It is a bit about caring just not to repeat what we have been doing traditionally. And I think there are many, many ways. For example, if you care about diversity or about gender, I'm not saying you should just do a program only with women and women composers. Many could at least consider, are the proportions okay? Are the women invited? Are the men invited? Are people from different nationalities? Is it not just like Switzerland, Germany, Austria kind of thing? Or this could be thinking of the perspective of today. If you also care not just about their compositions and this kind of, as you said, this kind of male genius figure, but really about the context. And even, for example, also caring about who were the performers. Well, there's this musicologist, Nick Cook. He writes about, in his book, it's called Beyond the Score. and he kind of proposes to change the paradigm in which we always put like the manuscript, the first edition, like this pyramid, and we don't include, for example, things like interpretations or performers, or context or reception, as important, like the intentions of the composer were the most important. The context was much more diverse than this canonic thing, and maybe the piece was performed for the first time by a woman.
I actually reflect a lot on, let's say, washing out the repertoire when we're playing the same piece over and over again, like Schubert, Arpeggione, or something like that, as an example. And it's an enormous amount of recordings. And I mean, the music is very beautiful, and I understand the intention to play it again and again. But also I ask myself to which limit we can work with this material.
Yes, I think there are two possible things. Like, of course, I understand if people keep wanting to play the Arpeggione Sonata because it's so beautiful. But maybe together with the Arpeggione, then you could put some piece by a composer in Vienna at that time who is lesser known for whatever reasons. Maybe you can put sonata by Steibelt or by whoever. Another way could also be to think, okay, we have been performing these pieces, but maybe like the range of creativity that we have reached when performing these pieces, it's not the level of creativity that these musicians had in the 19th century. Many people in, Beethoven sonata wouldn't do preludes or wouldn't ornament, though we know that this was completely customary.
Or even arpeggiate the chords in the piano part.
Exactly. Or play portamenti in the strings and so many other things that are actually not in the score. And for example, these issues of the transcriptions. There were many pieces that they were even for the piano solo, that people rearranged them in the way that they changed their writing. And this was something that was even completely customary in that time. For example, of Weber pieces, we have editions by Liszt. But it doesn't even have to be like it goes so late in generations. In a way, it can be that while you're playing it, you can add some notes here and some notes there, in a way of making the instrument sound better, or some octaves, or some whatever. Or if you are playing a nocturne, we all know that they did ornamentations as a singer would do. So maybe we can push these new readings, because the good part is that if you really are so daring, then the recordings are going to sound so different that you will feel that it's different pieces, and it doesn't matter anymore if it's the Arpeggione or not.
And what to do with this expectation on the market that a recording should be perfect? There is a certain canon and like maybe an ornamentation. I mean, even with Renaissance music, I don't see so much people doing ornaments.
Yeah, it's horrible. But I think it also has to do, for example, with mainstream HIP Baroque. I hear stories of people that they have so little rehearsal time that they play Rameau, and they don't do Inégal. And the conductor is like, oh, we only have one morning of rehearsal. We just play how it is on the score. It's like, and with very famous groups. Sometimes it's horrible. I don't have a good solution. I think we also have to work in our relations to the engineers. And it's also a question if we should become ourselves the audio engineers, because we also see the expenses of how it is.
We have to be social media managers, administrators, like organizers, tax advisors.
Yes, we have to do everything. In a way, it's more similar, I think, with the models of the past, in which not that, but at least they played like several instruments, and they composed and they transcribed, and it would be great to concentrate more on the art. Though I think it also has some positive things with this kind of democratization that spaces are more open if you manage to get it through, which is so difficult. But I think it would be amazing if we would find other solutions that could substitute the CD, like recordings of live concerts would be great, in which you allow more wrong notes. Concerts that are just online, maybe as a recording of a video, and that people appreciate this more, or DVDs, or DVDs is super old. New ways in a way to listen to to music and to edit music and really to stop caring that much about.
Or even like lecture concerts can be not just pure music, but putting it into the context and embracing the full picture.
I think the CD is still very problematic. For example, now that we are researching so much on early recordings, it is funny because so many people have prejudices against them, but actually, especially, of course, the acoustic recordings didn't have any editing, so it was how it was. And on the other hand, nowadays, when you listen to a CD, you know that there can be so many cuts. It has nothing to do with the actual
Basically,
performance.
you play just a chromatic scale and they make a third Rachmaninoff concerto out of that. Yes, and also the quality of the CD, it still, I think, stays as it was 20 years before. It's like this resolution that is 16-bit or like 32. I'm not very strong in that, but with video, we have 4K, 5K, whatever. And with the sound, it stays kind of the same format, which is a bit disappointing.
Well, I'm sure that this will change at some point, but the problem is that many times the people in power are the most conservatives and are the ones that are expecting that you send them your CDs to which you have put half your salary to record the CD that year. On this bright note.
On this bright, very inspiring note. Thank you very much, Laura. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and go and check out Laura's atelier.
Yes, so we are having this inaugural concert, but we want to create this as a kind of independent space in Basel that is available also for other musicians to have some options of beyond the Scola and beyond the usual concert places that people are kind of used to it, and in a way where we can create some of these conversations a bit outside the market and with other kind of approach. And it's, of course, amazing to have such a place. It will be the 22nd of March at 7. We want to start spring with historically informed Viennese waltzes, besides other music in Vienna. And of course, we care to include some female composers and also some female pianists, because we will also use a reproducing piano that with some piano rolls played by amazing pianists of the past.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Thanks to you.